The House Oversight Subcommittee on Child Welfare System will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Mearman.
Here.
Representatives Regas.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Conlon.
Here.
McDonald.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 members present. You do have a quorum.
Representative Regas moves to approve the minutes of the 24th meeting. Hearing no objection, they are approved. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. We are hearing testimony on the Auditor General's performance audit into the Office of Family Advocate within the Department of Health and Human Services, Children Services Administration. We will first hear from Ivy Jarkosh and Jessica Armstrong with the Office of Auditor General, followed by Children's Services Administrator, Deputy Director Demetrius Starling. Ivy and Jessica, when you're ready, you may approach. And go ahead when you're ready and push the red button.
Good morning, Chairman Mearman and committee members, and thank you for inviting us here today to discuss our performance audit of the Office of Family Advocate, Department of Health and Human Services. I am Ivy Jarosh, and I am the Audit Manager for Performance Audits of MDHHS. I have with me today Jessica Armstrong, who was the supervisor for this project. I'll get started with prepared remarks related to some general overall information. Then Jessica will move on with a more detailed discussion of our findings. We can then take any questions from the committee. MDHHS's Office of Family Advocate, referred to as OFA, acts as an internal monitor for certain child welfare activities within MDHHS and is responsible for various related communications, including overseeing the independent SAFE system review. Through this process, OFA staff reviews selected cases with a child fatality and recent involvement with MDHHS's child welfare system. The purpose of OFA's review is to help identify and communicate opportunities for internal systemic improvements. In addition to conducting these individual case reviews, OFA is also responsible for preparing an annual report of its overall SAFE system review results to provide key MDHHS child welfare areas with identified improvement opportunities and recommendations. In addition to the SAFE system review process, OFA also serves as the MDHHS liaison with DTMB's Office of Child Advocate and is responsible for communicating and coordinating the department's response to the Office of Child Advocate's findings and recommendations. OFA is also responsible for a number of other things, including addressing constituent concerns and/or complaints related to the child welfare process or specific cases, maintaining MDHHS's registry of select child fatality information, providing notification to DTMB's Office of Child Advocate, the Michigan Public Health Institute, select legislators, and MDHHS's leadership of child fatalities with recent MDHHS child welfare involvement, and assisting with collaborative case assessments when an urgent review of a child welfare case is warranted, and furnishing the final assessment reports to MDHHS management. We issued this report April 10th, 2025. Our audit period generally covered January 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as outlined on page 19 of the report. Our audit procedures are detailed on pages 19 through 21 of the report and included but were not limited to conducting interviews, reviewing applicable state laws and departmental policies and procedures, testing judgmentally and randomly selected items to evaluate OFA's activities, assessing OFA's processes related to MDHHS's Child Death Registry and its SAFE Systems Review Annual Report. Our audit included 2 objectives, noted just inside the front cover of the report in our report summary. The first was to assess the sufficiency of OFA's efforts to identify and communicate opportunities to improve MDHHS's child welfare activities. For this objective, we concluded OFA's efforts were sufficient with exceptions. We reported 1 material finding related to needed improvements in OFA's safe system review process. The other factors we considered in reaching this conclusion are also highlighted on page 9. Our second objective was to assess the sufficiency of OFA's efforts to provide selected child fatality information to intended parties. For this second objective, we concluded OFA's efforts were sufficient with exceptions. Material findings for this objective are Finding 1, Part D, regarding OFA's distribution of its 2022 Safe Systems Review Annual Report, and Finding 2 related to the validation and error correction process for child fatality registry information. The other factors considered in reaching our conclusion for this second objective can be found on page 15. MDHHS agreed with our recommendations for both findings, and its preliminary responses at the time of our audit report issuance indicated that OFA had already implemented some corrective measures as of April 2025 and had other planned corrective actions either in process or expected to be carried out at a future date. At this time, we've received a copy of OFA's final corrective action plan submitted to the State Budget Office, and we've not yet received the acceptance of the plan from the State Budget Office. Typically, our goal is to conduct a follow-up review of material findings within 12 to 18 months after release of a report. However, the time frame in which we go back can be impacted by our office's resources and the agency's time frames outlined in its final corrective action plan submitted to and accepted by the State Budget Office. Jessica will now take us through the findings.
Thank you, Ivy. Before we dive into finding 1, I'd like to point out that in Michigan, there's a collaborative effort in reviewing child death cases. This includes OFA's Safe Systems reviews, as well as other reviews conducted by entities such as local MDHHS offices, DTMB's Office of Child Advocate, and the State Court Administrative Office. OFA's Safe System Review is one type of child death review and is conducted to examine the history of a child death case and encourage collaboration across ranks and disciplines to help identify and communicate internal MDHHS systemic barriers which may have impacted child welfare case practice. Potential recommended actions following each Safe System review can include departmental policy changes, staff training, strengthened collaboration, and/or public outreach and education. Finding 1 begins on page 10. OFA needs to improve its Safe Systems review process to help ensure it evaluates all applicable MDHHS child death notifications, completes a Safe Systems review when required, accurately collects Safe Systems review information, and appropriately communicates recommendations for needed improvements. Doing so would strengthen OFA's assurance it consistently identifies needed changes in MDHHS's child welfare activities and fully and timely conveys its recommendations to advance more positive outcomes for children and families. In Part A, we identified 150 child deaths between January 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, which OFA did not include in its Safe Systems review evaluation process to determine whether circumstances surrounding the child's death warranted a Safe Systems review. For Part B, we noted Safe Systems reviews were not always completed for child death notifications meeting the Safe Systems review criteria. OFA selected 35 child death notifications for Safe Systems reviews, rather than reviewing all 143 death notifications meeting Safe Systems review criteria between January 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. This practice was not consistent with MDHHS's Safe Systems Review Protocol, indicating a Safe Systems Review will be completed when a child dies and one or more of the Safe Systems Review criteria are met. OFA also did not conduct Safe Systems Reviews for 27 of the 150 child death notifications identified in Part A as meeting Safe Systems Review criteria, nor did it include these child deaths in its sampling process. Part C notes, the Safe Systems information OFA collected and used to prepare its annual report of demographic data and recommendations was not always accurate. The data for 6 of 21 selected Safe Systems reviews contained inaccurate information, including the children's gender, cause of death, and scoring information related to the determined level of quality improvement needed. For Part D, we determined OFA did not always timely provide or distribute its Safe Systems Review annual report to all key areas within the department supporting the child welfare system. MDHHS's 2022 Safe Systems Review annual report was approved for distribution in May 2024 and contained 163 identified improvement opportunities. OFA provided the final report to the department's Children's Services Agencies, In-Home Services Bureau Director, and Administration Bureau Director in July 2024 and November 2024, respectively. While we noted OFA provided its final 2022 report and/or high-level recommendations to some of the department's key child welfare areas, it had not distributed the report to the Children's Services Agency Out-of-Home Services Bureau Management or the Business Service Center directors when the report included recommendations impacting these areas. We considered this a material condition because of the number of child deaths not evaluated or reviewed and the potential impact on OFA's identification and communication of needed improvements in MDHHS's child welfare activities. MDHHS agreed with our recommendation to improve its process and indicated in its preliminary response that it took immediate steps to enhance the Safe System Review process. Finding number 2 begins on page 16. OFA needs to improve its validation and error correction process for MDHHS's publicly reported child fatality registry information. Doing so would help OFA ensure MDHHS consistently provides timely and reliable child fatality information to the public and fulfills its statutory responsibilities related to the child fatality registry. MDHHS used data queries to summarize applicable MySACWIS information and publicly report it in the registry. OFA informed us that near the end of calendar year 2022, it began a process to validate the queried MySACWIS data results used for the registry. OFA noted discrepancies, including, but not limited to, duplicated child death information, erroneous dates of death, and inaccurate personal identification numbers. OFA also informed us that although it continued its internal validation process, it temporarily paused its public child fatality registry reporting to address the noted query language concerns and data discrepancies. We noted as of December 2024, OFA had neither updated its historical child fatality registry information for identified discrepancies, nor resumed its public reporting. We consider this a material condition because unreliable data hinders OFA's ability to meet its mandate under state law for publicly reported child fatality information and could also negatively impact other stakeholders who may utilize this information. MDHHS agreed with our recommendation and indicated in its preliminary response it was already taking steps to improve its validation and error correction process. This concludes our prepared remarks, and we will now address any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll start off by saying I appreciate and just first off want to say appreciate the department agreeing with these findings and looks like working to find some changes. So a couple of questions from me. Can you talk to me about the 150 child deaths unevaluated and the 135 that met the criteria? Does that mean there's 150 that should have been evaluated and then only 135 investigated? Or do I have that wrong?
So when we did our review, we identified 150 child deaths that were in the MySACWIS system that OFA had not included in its evaluation process. And then the 135, so that's separate from the 135. So then the 135 relates to the child deaths that did qualify for a safe systems review that OFA did not complete the safe systems review on because it used a sampling process, even though its protocol said it would evaluate all child deaths that were applicable for a safe systems review.
Could you go through, and I can ask Director Starling this too, I guess, but what triggers that investigation? There's a set of categories that triggers that. If CPS has been involved, I know was one of them, a certain time period before.
Yes, on page 10 of the report, we have what triggers it. It's the child was a member of an open foster care case at the time of the fatality or within 6 months preceding the date of the fatality. The Children's Protective Services was involved with either the child or any immediate family member of the child victim at the time of the incident or within the 6 months preceding the fatality. And MDHSS director, the CSA director, or a business service center director requests a review of the fatality.
And again, if you want me to ask Starling this, but business services director, is it?
Yeah,
I
that's,
can-
The business service center directors are over the local offices, but the department could speak more in terms of
Yeah,
their role in the
perfect.
process.
Thank you. Representative Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of, I guess, comparisons with other states, I don't know if you guys do this, if there's like a national network where all the, auditor generals get together and they compare, state to state. Do you have any idea as to kind of with these findings, like, is this normal in other states? Are you aware of, have any insight there with having 150 deaths, like, not evaluated or 30% inaccuracies? Inaccuracies. Is that like something that's comparable to other states with their family offices or family advocate offices?
currently, all the states don't participate in this process.
Gotcha.
And we didn't really find any related findings in other states
Okay.
for this process.
Interesting. Okay. I just was curious about that. I guess with some of the details here, with the inaccurate information, so a cause of death could be identified as inaccurate. Could you break down what that looked like, or what does that mean, where the cause of death was inaccurate?
I don't remember the exact specifics of what we found, but it could be the death was listed as accidental, but looking at the records, it was clear it was a homicide, something
Gotcha.
similar to that.
Okay, so then with 30% of SSRs having inaccuracies like that, the department said that it was an oversight, that this amount was an oversight,
Yeah, that's correct. That's in their response.
as in like a rounding error or something, like that's kind of what it was deemed.
I think probably the department would be better to
Okay.
answer
All right,
that.
yeah, thank you.
Representative Regas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 10 also, when you're looking at the criteria, so the child was a member of an open foster care case, et cetera. Child Protective Services was involved. Either the child or immediate family of the child victim at any time of the incident or within 6 months preceding the child's date of fatality. So my question is, the cases, so if a case was closed, would they drop off of this system anyway? And what happens if a case is closed by CPS and then the child is murdered within a 6-month time frame? Would that child be included in this 150 child death number, or are they essentially just dropped off the system if their case is closed? Or is that a better question for the department?
I believe they would be included in this because they would have been open in the 6 months preceding, but I think it'd be better to clarify that with the
Okay.
department.
All right, thank you.
My last question is along the timeline you had referenced that they stopped reporting, and then I think you said something along the lines of by 2024 they still hadn't been reporting. Could you kind of run through that timeline one more time?
So for the child fatality registry, they stopped reporting after 2022 because they started this data validation process, which identified discrepancies. And then up through the end of our audit period, they had not resumed public reporting yet because they were still working through the data validation process to make sure they were reporting accurate information.
So we're talking about 2 years.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, I am grateful for the work that you do and keep helping us check ourselves, make sure we're getting these kind of things right.
Thank you.
Director Starling, when you're ready, and go ahead and start.
Good morning, Chair Meerman and the esteemed Oversight Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak to the OAG's audit in regards to OFA. And I believe that through my detailed testimony, I'll be able to provide some answers and responses to some of the questions that have been fielded so far. So just a quick introduction and clarity in regards to the respective parties that take place in some of these reviews. The Office of Family Advocate is an internal component of Children's Services Administration, and it's part of our continuous quality improvement framework. The three primary categories of responsibility, including serving as a liaison between CSA and the Office of the Family Advocate, addressing child welfare-related constituent concerns or complaints, and managing some of the key functions within CSA related to child death reviews and data, including oversight of our Safe Systems Review. The Office of Family Advocate, which again is housed under the Division of Continuous Quality Improvement, is internal to our Children's Services Administration and should not be confused with the Children's Services Ombudsman Office, now known as OCA, which is an independent office housed under the Department of Technology Management and Budget, which is tasked with the responsibility to address complaints concerning actions of Michigan's child welfare system. The Office of Family Advocate validates child death data through three primary sources: our centralized intake unit, which is again housed within CSA, our data warehouse, which is also housed within CSA, and our DHHS Vital Records Department. The 150 cases that were noted as missed for review in the OAG report were incidents that were brought forth to our attention by OFA through Michigan's Vital Record Systems, but were not reported to our centralized intake unit. However, they still met the criteria for a Safe Systems Review. I will touch upon this a little bit more in my testimony, but it should be noted that none of these deaths were results of suspected child abuse or neglect. I really want to highlight that point. We have vastly improved our validation process since February of '24, and this barrier has been eliminated. So just a quick comparison between the OFA work versus our CPS or Child Protective Services work. Within OFA, there's no direct case management. These are retrospective reviews that are being done by this respective unit. They are again a part of our continuous quality improvement process. They serve as the liaison between CSA and the Office of Child Advocate. They address constituent concerns. They're responsible for child death data, and they oversee the Safe Systems Review. Within CPS, I think it's important for me to note that these are direct case managers that are designed to rectify conditions which threaten the health and safety of our children in Michigan due to the action or inaction of those responsible for their care and well-being. They're also responsible for direct response after assignment of CPS complaints through our centralized intake unit. They confirm or deny child abuse or neglect cases, and they take actions to ensure safety up to court action and removal. So within our Safe Systems Review, I would like to clarify some misunderstandings of the 150 cases that are often quoted from the OAG audit report. I want it to be clear that this does not mean that any allegations of child abuse or neglect were not investigated by CPS. As noted previously, the OFA is part of our quality assurance process, and they do not conduct CPS investigations. What did not happen was a historical review after the deaths to look at overall trends to make systemic process improvements on all of those cases. The audit report indicates that the OFA excluded 150 MDHHS child death notifications from its SSR evaluation process and did not complete SSRs for 135 death notifications meeting that same SSR criteria. These child death notifications were vital record notifications. In Michigan, death certificates are completed through the Electronic Death Registration System, better known as EDRS. Specific OFA team members receive vital records notifications when there is a death of a minor that had any child welfare history. However, because the OFA was notified of these deaths by vital records, the OAG determined that these deaths should have been assessed for a possible historical review. The OAG found 135 deaths that they felt met criteria for a safe systems review, to which we conceded. The OFA did verify that none of these deaths were related to child abuse or neglect. So again, what is the Safe Systems Review? First and foremost, the Safe Systems Review is not an investigation into a child death or any type of child abuse or neglect complaint. It is a retrospective, systemic review of child deaths that meet the criteria for review, and the criteria will be discussed further in my testimony. So comparisons between a Safe Systems Review versus a CPS investigation. Safe Systems Reviews are an after-the-fact systemic review of a child death. It does not matter if the child death was due to abuse or neglect. The review starts at minimum 90 days after the date of death. The review is not mandated by any statute at this time. Recommendations for systemic changes are included in this review that are intended to lead to better outcomes for children and families. For a CPS investigation, it's a response to reported incident of suspected child abuse or neglect. It's assigned to a CPS investigator for investigation. It ultimately determines if abuse or neglect occurred. It works in tandem with law enforcement and other stakeholders, and it follows strict criteria of our child protection law. So just a quick background of the Safe Systems Review. In the fall of 2020, MDHHS CSA joined the National Partnership of Child Safety to strengthen our Michigan's resolve to reduce the number of child fatalities. What is the NPCS? The National Partnership for Child Safety, which was initially formed in 2018, is a quality improvement collaborative whose aim is to improve child safety and reduce child maltreatment fatalities through the application of safety science and shared data across the nation. Members of this collaborative have a shared goal of strengthening families, promoting innovations, and a public health response to reducing and preventing child maltreatment and fatalities. The NPCS currently includes the participation of 40 states, Michigan being one, as I noted, counties, and tribal child and family serving child welfare jurisdictions. Through this partnership, MDHHS created the Safe Systems Review. Again, the goal is to strengthen our resolve to reduce the number of child deaths while maintaining a work environment aligned with focusing on engagement, teaming, assessment, and monitoring. The SSR examines the history of a child welfare case prior to the death but also acknowledges the high-risk nature of child welfare work. Rather than focus on simply the investigative actions regarding the case decisions, the SSR identifies systemic barriers that may have impacted that case. It encourages collaboration across ranks and disciplines to seek solutions, promoting a blame-free environment where our professionals can report errors to help us identify systemic opportunities and gaps without fear of reprimand or punishment. It is important to note that the SSR is not the only child death review that is conducted within Children's Services Administration. There are other reviews that do focus on application of policy and local office gaps and needs for follow-up actions. This is not the goal of SSR. Not all child deaths are reported to centralized intake are due to child abuse or neglect. Therefore, not all child deaths that are subject to a safe system review were due to child abuse or neglect, but these particular cases may be reviewed on a local county level. Just some examples of the causes of death other than child abuse or neglect that meet the criteria for an SSR includes vehicular accidents, asphyxiation, better known as unsafe sleep, medical complications, accidental drownings, and suicides. The criteria for an SSR are any child deaths where the child was a member of an open foster care case at the time of the death or within 6 months preceding the child's date of death, or when CPS was involved with the child or any immediate family member at the time of the incident or within 6 months preceding the child's date of death. To meet criteria for a safe systems review, the cause of death does not have to be due to any child abuse or neglect. All safe systems reviews are initiated at least 90 days after death, but not all child deaths that meet criteria may be selected for review. A sample of that population is selected that remains impartial and fluctuates as needed to ensure sustainability and adapt to team resources. When we talk about the importance of the SSR, it's really important to note that, it's a systemic qualitative approach to reviewing child deaths. In conjunction with other compliance-driven approaches, it leads to more effective recommendations for policy and practice changes as we seek to protect our children and reduce harm by balancing individual and system accountability. So, how internal studies have led to improvement of our child welfare system? The SSR has led to really focusing our department on safety science and data sharing to best support these changes. We work in conjunction with the National Partnership for Child Safety and Casey Family Programs. We use the safety science to best inform practice, and so we can have more of a preventative response. The Safe Systems Review also uses interviews to glean information from investigators, case managers, supervisors, law enforcement officials, medical practitioners, service providers, anyone associated with the deceased child's case history over the past 2 years that's willing to participate. These conversations have led to more robust conversations around systemic gaps and improvement opportunities that may have contributed to the critical incident. The information obtained is captured in the Safe Systems Improvement Tool, an information integration tool designed to be the output of a systems analysis process. It takes our qualitative information from the interviews and provides quantitative aggregates to derive insights, identify patterns, and draw conclusions. So who's a part of the SSR? Or who oversees the SSR? The Office of Family Advocate. They also work in conjunction with the rest of the team on a division of continuous quality improvement, central office staff, including myself, and local county child welfare professionals. What is the cadence of our SSRs? We do these on a monthly basis. And what types of cases are reviewed? Again, any cause of death for a child that meets the criteria for an SSR. Again, vehicular homicides, positional asphyxiation, medical complications, drowning, suicides, firearm deaths, or blunt force trauma. So I want to now get into the actual OAG audit findings. In finding number 1, OFA excluded 150 MDHHS child death notifications from its SSR evaluation process and did not complete SSRs for 135 death notifications meeting that SSR criteria. Also, almost 30% of our SSR information reviewed has some inaccuracies related to information OFA uses for preparing its annual report of SSR demographic data and systemic improvement recommendations. Further, OFA did not consistently distribute its most recently completed SSR annual report to all key areas within MDHHS supporting child welfare systems. Our department response to the finding number 1 is that we agree with the finding and took immediate actions to enhance the SSR process. MDHHS has voluntarily partnered with the National Partnership for Child Safety as a continuous quality improvement venture to improve child safety. Through this partnership, MDHHS works closely with the Center for Innovation in Population Health at the University of Kentucky to create the Safe Systems Review for further qualitative improvement and system reforms related to child welfare. The OFA modified the MySACWS query language and enhanced our data validation process to improve the accuracy of the MySACWS data evaluated for an SSR review effective February of 2024. The OFA corrected the reporting inaccuracies identified during our September 2024 period and will continue to advocate to secure access to the Death Certificate Registry, EDRS, and amend the intra-agency agreement to improve accuracy of reporting. Additionally, the OFA has eliminated bi-monthly technical assistance and fidelity reviews to ensure continuous education is provided on a more accurate scoring to the safe system reviewers. The OFA is also in the process of updating the SSR protocol with a formalized sampling methodology and formalized reporting procedures that outline the annual report distribution process. Again, MySACWS is our electronic case management system. Our status is compliant with the follow-up requirements from the audit, and the OFA continues bi-monthly technical assistance, as noted. In finding number 2, for periods subsequent to calendar year 2022, OFA had neither reported applicable data in the Child Fatality Registry nor updated the registry's historical information for known discrepancies as of December of 2024. MDHHS agrees with the finding and recognizes that there are always room for opportunities for improvement. The OFA received legal input to ensure correct interpretation of the requirements within MCL Section 722.627B as resumed public reporting of child fatality registry information during January 25 after improving the validation and improvement process. MDHHS modified the MySACWS query language to improve accuracy of our MySACWS data, and the OFA has modified the master fatality tracking tool to ensure all sources of the data reported to OFA are included and will continue to hand validate all data going forward. The Data Management Unit, better known as DMU, will continue to send weekly and monthly child death data to OFA, and any data concerns identified during the validation process will be promptly evaluated and resolved. It should be noted that this piece has been completed. The OFA continues to validate our data on, a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and now annual basis. The OFA has updated the public website to ensure compliance with MCL Section 722.627B. The OFA manager has also enacted a protocol to ensure that this is completed on an annual basis and is reported directly to me. Just one more thing of note. I know, Rep. Paquette, you asked some information in regards to manner of death versus cause of death, and I appreciate the question. So there's often confusion regarding the terms manner of death versus the cause of death. The manner of death describes the general circumstances that led to the child's death, and it's usually categorized as natural, accidental, suicide, homicide, undetermined, or pending, unknown. And when it's pending, we usually wait for the coroner's report. The cause of death is the specific or disease, injury, or event that initiated the chain of the events. So within our Michigan Data Death State Advisory Team, we publish an annual report. And in that report, it outlines the manner of death for Michigan's resident children. For example, the 2022 data report indicates that 9% of Michigan's resident children die by homicide. That is the data that is the manner of death. However, the cause of death could or could not have been at the hands of a responsible caretaker from child abuse or neglect. If the perpetrator was a legal parent with their minor child, then it could be looked as child abuse as far as the cause of death. If the perpetrator was a teen against another teen and a gang-related homicide, then it would not be child abuse. So I hope that, offers some clarity in regards to manner of death versus the cause of death. So, Rep. Meerman, that's the end of my testimony, so I'm open to any questions or inquiries from the board.
Thank you, Director Starling.
Sir.
I guess kind of almost in your opening statement, you talked about the 150 deaths not being a result of child abuse. Can you tell me how we know that?
Yes, so we unfortunately in Michigan have a lot of positional asphyxiation deaths, safe sleep. And as a result of those complaints being investigated by either or in tandem with law enforcement and also getting the medical report from the coroner's office, it's not deemed child abuse or neglect. These are unfortunate and traumatic incidents that happen at way too high of a rate, but it's not for a lack of trying to reach the particular population. So those cases wouldn't be viewed as child abuse or neglect. And if I can just speak on that a little bit, I know there have been a lot of questions relative to safe sleep. And I just want to really acknowledge some of the collaboration within the department and also with folks from the OAG department and OCA and our stakeholders in the community, such as hospital administrators, folks within the community, MPHI, as we try to strengthen our resolve and also messaging around safe sleep and the importance of not co-sleeping, making sure you don't put toys or some kind of thing that could strangle a child in a crib. So that's really been a focal point for the department, but it's unfortunately things that continue to happen at such a high rate.
So those 150 deaths have been looked into?
Right, so those cases have been investigated by CPS. However, those have not all been reviewed for SSR.
So internally, you saw that those 150 deaths weren't by abuse, is what you're saying? So,
Correct.
But they did have an open foster care case, one of the three categories.
Correct. And the thing around that, to even expound on that more.
So is there a place that we can find out that information, that the 150 deaths were looked into?
Yes, we can do a review of all the CPS or the cases that were assigned for CPS investigation and get that information.
Okay.
And just to expound on that a little bit more, Rep. Meerman, the unfortunate thing is that in reviewing an absorbent amount of safe sleeps, there isn't a lot that you can glean from reviewing all safe sleep deaths. These are very unfortunate, traumatic situations that occur, and we know that in tandem with law enforcement doing investigation, the coroner's office doing investigation, that these were unfortunate accidents. There wouldn't be, in a lot of instances, a lot of different information that will lead to more substantial qualitative, long-term changes or process improvements by reviewing all safe sleep deaths.
Representative Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to build on cause of death, manner of death, I guess, so 6 out of the 21 that were selected, right, had inaccuracies. And so what you're describing then and contending is that, so the inaccuracies on cause of death were that they wrote down the manner of death instead, and that was what was compiled? Or I guess, could you build on that a bit for me? I got a little bit lost in what you're
Yeah.
describing.
So we would have to go back and look at all of those cases as far as what the, what happened at the inception of those particular cases, because it may have been ruled as an accident initially, but then as a course of the investigation that occurred within law enforcement or even the coroner's office, it was not ruled an accident. So I will have to go back and see if I can glean more data in regards to how we landed on the 9% number.
Okay, so then with the comment that, so like if 6 children died and the cause of death for those 6 children was compiled inaccurately, is that an oversight in your opinion?
It may be, yeah. It may be an oversight.
So break that down for me as to how that could possibly be an oversight or
Well,
seen as an oversight with, I guess, manner of death in mind.
Well, I think it takes more collaboration between us and law enforcement, the coroner's office, and also how the records are captured in the death reports to make sure that we have an ecosystem that's really looking at all of those cases to make sure there's accurate information. I can't really zero in, rep on who that person would be as far as responsibility for the overall oversight.
No, I
But
meant,
yeah.
it was contended that these inaccuracies as cause of death of at least 6 children in the state of Michigan was an oversight. Like, I don't find that to be an oversight that the cause of death was inaccurate and compiled by you guys, that data was like, that's an oversight, you'd say, that we don't know the cause of death from these children in the state of Michigan?
It may be. I can't give you a definite answer on that, but that's something I can definitely take back to the team and have some more dialogue around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Starling, for being here today. So I have a question about in the criteria for the SSR to be met on page 10 there. So the child was a member of an open foster care case at the time of the fatality or within 6 months preceding the child's death or date of fatality, or even a CPS getting involved within 6 months, around that child's death. If CPS had closed the case and then the child died within 6 months, does that still trigger in your system for you to investigate?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, because I'm obviously specifically interested in the Rowan Morey case. Of the case was closed, and then the child, it was a custodial kidnapping, and the custodial parent murdered this 5-year-old child.
Yep.
So I would actually like a little bit more of information on that case if I can touch base with you later.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I mean, the mother's a constituent of mine, so it's been pretty personal to me. So out of the 150 child deaths, 135 of them should have been investigated. Is that the gist of it here?
That's correct.
Okay, so then because there was no investigation that took place, you stated that none of the 135 deaths were as a result of abuse or neglect.
Correct.
And do you rely on that information from the death certificates, or how do you?
No. So on those cases, there was an actual CPS investigation.
Okay.
But there was no information that was fielded or that was gleaned that led us to believe that those deaths occurred as a result of child abuse or neglect.
Okay.
So that's why I tried to delineate the two.
Mm-hmm.
And within those cases, and again, I know that that's something that's difficult for folks to wrap their minds around sometimes, is that we don't do reviews on all those because of the trauma that families are already going through. We do the CPS investigation, law enforcement is knocking on your door, the coroner's office is knocking on your door.
As they should.
As they should, right? But to continue to re-traumatize that family by doing a safe systems review for child deaths, are not always necessary in those particular cases. But a CPS investigation has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the lack of doing these investigations, it could actually endanger the lives of other siblings in the home, wouldn't you say, if the parent is not capable of watching the child at the pool or whatever the case may be that caused this child's death.
Right.
If there's other children in the home and this parent is kind of in some ways negligent to have a child die from certain situations.
No, Rodriguez, I really appreciate that question, and I think this is the beauty and the power of our department being able to take our reviews to another level. So when I talked about the fact that we have the ability to do our own reviews outside of SSR, we do those. And that is a particular situation or instance that it will be triggered. So we have what is called the critical case assessment, that when we have a situation where either the BSC directors, and I know someone asked about the BSC directors. We have 5 business service center directors that their footprint is across 5 regions of the state. You know, the UP, Central Michigan, West, Southeast, and the southern part of the state. When these cases come to either their attention or my attention, we trigger what is called our CCA, and we do internal reviews for central office and also local county offices to take this to another level to ensure that we're not missing anything. So we will activate our central office staff, our legal department to be a part of the review, and also the local county staff. We come together and we talk about systemic issues or concerns that may not have been reviewed during the SSR, but we have the ability to do those on our end. So we're just trying to make sure we fill those gaps, Rodriguez. We don't want any unnecessary, child deaths in our state, especially to your point, if we have families that may have a small kiddo that's still in the house that may be at risk for, have safety risks that we want to make sure that we're addressing.
And if I could just ask one more quick question, Mr. Chair, that would be good. So, what is the average number of child deaths per year that are under the cases are under the supervision of the MDHHS? Do you know?
I don't have that data, but I can go back to my data management team to see if we can.
Okay, I'm curious to see because we have 150 here and then 135 should have been investigated. What I would like to see kind of to get a better grasp on it, what were the total number?
Yep. Okay, that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
From the outside looking in, we don't know the circumstances of those 150 deaths. It sounds like the department has decided that, it was SIDS. So again, to my question, which you've already agreed to get us that information, we'd like to. It's still not public to the public. It looks like there's 150 deaths uninvestigated, and I realize it's not necessarily an investigation. It's a looking at what the department maybe could have done differently. So that would be great to get that information about how the department made that decision because, again, from the outside, we just see the 150 not done.
Yeah, and to that point, Rep, I think, it's incumbent on myself and the leadership team to make sure that we are edifying the public. So if our front-facing website needs to be beefed up so we can, again, clearly delineate what the responsibilities are for CPS, OFA, and OCA, so there's not this sense of confusion and chaos going forward, we'll do that.
So in 2022, it was, I guess the department at some point saw a need to try to get this information better. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about? You must have seen maybe some of the same things you just mentioned just now.
With the National Partnership for Child Safety?
Well, you stopped reporting.
What? I'm sorry?
You stopped reporting, stopped doing that open report.
The open
You voluntarily pulled that down and said, we're looking at how we can get this information better, I think is how it's being described. But from 2022 to 24, we didn't get a report.
I don't know if we didn't get a report or the reports were not shared or disseminated outwardly more. So we had a report. The annual reports are something that we have to complete.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting maybe it wasn't publicly available?
Yeah, what it was is that, so with most of these cases, these instances of child deaths, it affects, at least from our perspective and what we've been able to glean, the in-home services, which is the front end of our systems that oversees prevention, preservation, and CPS programs. So the reports were shared with them, but to OAG's credit, I will say that we missed an opportunity to share that openly with other folks within our department. So Out of Home Bureau deals with our back end of our systems. So when you think about foster care, adoption, licensing, juvenile justice programs, the report and the findings were not shared with them. So we didn't have this sense of consistency across our child welfare continuum to come up with better processes because the report was not shared with them. But since then, it's been rectified.
So back to 2022, looks like the department was trying to get it right.
Correct.
The Office of Auditor General started an audit. Is there anything to show that the department was on a timeline to sort of make that public before January 2025? I'm just wondering if the Office of the Auditor General kind of pushed you to get it out there. To me, 2 years is too long. It doesn't seem that complicated, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and talk to my team. But again, to OAG's credit, I think that them making sure that we have a keen focus on not only some of our systems improvement, but also message sharing is important. So I will have to go back and ask my team if that was something that was discussed at the time, and we put a pin in it for whatever reason, and we'll get back with you on that one.
Thank you. Representative Collin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for testifying today. I'm just wondering, it sounds like you have a list of things you're working on to make improvements. Is there anything the legislature could do, to help the Office of Family Advocates in ensuring that all these applicable child death, notifications are evaluated?
Yes, great question. So in earnest, our department started to work with the University of Kentucky and Dr. Michael Cole, and the National Partnership of Child Safety in 2020. And since then, we have, kind of evolved a little bit relative to how we do our reviews. And we're from a nationwide perspective, we're at 40 states. We would like for it to be all 50 states, to be quite frank, but also make sure that we have this sense of being symbiotic in nature with our legislators and other stakeholders to ensure they understand, not only the parameters and criteria for SSRs, but also how they can play an instrumental role into ensuring kids are kept safe. And hopefully we can have some harm reduction when it comes to potential child deaths. It should also be noted that, this is something that I found to be extremely paramount for myself. So as of 2022, I'm actually on the steering committee, the National Steering Committee for the National Partnership of Child Safety. So I'm able to hear directly about some of the innovation that's happening in other states, steal that information and bring it back to our states. So hopefully we can keep kids safe at a more amplified level.
So this information about, that we're trying to get to this Office of Family Advocate can you describe where it's coming from? Before we've talked about death certificates. It sounds like we're talking about some internal departments within the DHHS as well. How do they get this information and where do they get it from?
Yeah, so originally it came through the child death notifications, and it was us relying specifically on emails that came from the death registry, but we had to rework our interagency agreement, so we'll now have access, OFA will now have access to the death registry as of spring of next year.
And is that the only place that Family Advocate gets information for these children?
Either through centralized intake, so if, there may be instances where a death is reported as a centralized intake before it gets through the death registry, so it's something that happens real time. We have unfortunate incidents that happen, where a kid may commit suicide or a kid is, killed in a car accident. That happens real time, and we get those through centralized intake before the death registry gets that information. So those are our two focal points in regards to how we receive information.
Because the categories that sort of trigger an SSR audit or investigation, they're all involving DHHS. So, whether it's foster care or CPS or, a director asking for a review, that's all within your within the department of DHHS. Is that right?
As far as how information gets to us?
As far as the interaction. So somebody there, maybe except for the idea that, the child's no longer being investigated as far as CPS is concerned. So 6 months out, CPS case was closed, for instance, then maybe there is not a knowledge by someone within the department that a child dies. But outside of that, to me, it seems like someone in the department knows that the child died.
Yes, if there is a situation where it was an open foster care case or previously 6 months ago or CPS previously 6 months ago, that will fall under our purview for review and investigation.
So there really isn't a mechanism for them to say, listen, a caseworker, for instance, this child just died. Here's the information, just want you to know.
Oh, absolutely. So are you asking how do we real-time provide input or information to our local county staff when they have an open CPS or foster care case or previously closed case?
Yeah, where they can provide information up to the family advocate.
Correct. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a duty to act on inefficiencies and failures involving the care of children. When the child welfare system fails, the consequences are catastrophic. If we do not scrutinize every instance of child death when the state has already been involved in that child's life, we are not holding our due diligence to the children of the state. It's clear that, like all aspects of government, the oversight of the child welfare system is necessary to ensure the system is functioning as it should, improving when it needs to, and reconciling its failures. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.